YCS Vancouver, the thing we've been working for over these last few months, is literally just a few days away, and we're trying to get a top with Dark Magician. No matter what the result is after this weekend, the support you've shown me over the last few months have been thousands and thousands of times more than I could have ever imagined. Before going into this video, I need to express my deepest thank you to each and every single one of you who have liked, shared, commented, and even watched the video for a second to the full duration of it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I couldn't have imagined me being in a situation like this where I wake up every day and I keep thinking about new ideas and things like that to make for future content. And for that, it wouldn't be even a thought if I didn't get the support I do from you. Thank you again, and let's get into the video. In this video, I just want to go over my final thoughts and my final actions that I'm going to be taking into preparing for YCS Vancouver. The deck and theory we've developed thus far is going to be what I take with me into the event. These 28 cards are the deck's engine. These are irreplaceable and the perfect ratios for what the deck wants to do. We've tested these cards over the last few months. I think I've finalized the strategy and what it needs to do in order to see the most amount of success. If you kept up with this series up until now, you know I've went over many times the reasoning behind these 28 cards and what they do. The big question mark lies in the other 12 main deck slots, as well as the other 15 side deck slots that will determine how well we do into various matchups at YCS Vancouver. Before we even attempt to go into a discussion regarding the cards that we're going to use to combat the current format, we need to take a look at how the format has developed and what are going to be the most represented decks in Vancouver. In my opinion, I still think Kashtira is going to be the best deck in the room, and I do think it's going to be the most represented deck in the room. That being said, decks like Unchained, Chimera, Pearly, Labyrinth are all going to be highly representative. Especially, I think Dragonlink is going to be a sneaky pick going into this current event. I just think those decks in particular have so much gas, and they all have various ways to accumulate endless advantage per se, especially Unchained. I think the reason why I think Unchained and Chimera, specifically those two decks, are going to be very highly representative. One, they are relatively cheap, right? Which means they're easily accessible. And I know that's not a good excuse because the players that are going to be playing at the highest tables, price doesn't matter. However, in between round 1 and 4, for example, where, let's face it, matchmaking is a crapshoot. You could play the likes of the world's best in Yu-Gi-Oh, or you can play the guy who's, coming from your locals, right? There's no in between between round and 4. And for that reason and that reason alone, I think Chimera and Unchained are going to be two crazy decks. The reason being is for that, which I just specified. In addition, I think not many people know what they do. Kashtira, Pearly, Dragonlink, Labyrinth, all those decks, Sprite variants, all those decks I do think have been around for so long that a lot of people are prepared for them. And I think although we do need to prepare for them, I think our attention needs to be shifted to what people are going to be playing now, not necessarily what they played before. Mana Diem and those synchro piles are going to be incredibly scary. And for that reason alone, I think we need to account for those upcoming decks, because essentially those turn skip decks, right? Branded also is going to be a heavy favored deck in this format, and that's the problem with YCS Vancouver. It's so unbelievably difficult to kind of prepare for everything, right? With 15 decks running around the format, and with Dark Magician being the engine that it is, we have such little space in our main deck to combat what we're going to see, right? So because of this, we need to essentially have the highest impact across the entire board, right? So if you noticed in the 28 cards that I have, I did end up removing Nibiru, Droll, Super Poly, and Secret Village. The reason for this is essentially, although it's not set in stone that these cards will be removed, I think Nibiru is going to be in the main deck for sure in this upcoming event. However, I think Droll has seen its time, and I think it's time to move on from Droll and Lockbird. Nibiru, on the other hand, I think is going to be a mainstay in the deck. Secret Village, I'm not sure whether or not I want it in the main or I want it in this side. Secret Village is one of those cards where going first, it's so unbelievably oppressive, especially in a very spell-heavy format. Like Secret Village by itself defeats your branded variants, your Chimera variants, runic variants, and things like that, right? Super Poly also protects Dragoon, which is essentially your win condition along with Winda from, being destroyed, which is incredibly good. So I think for that reason alone, I think we continue to main Village. However, I think leading up to the event, I'm going to be getting second opinions as well as the people in the comments whether or not Village in the main deck should be an option. I'm not quite sure about that. In addition, I think Super Poly is a huge question mark for me. I'm not sure if Super Poly is only as strong as what it could remove off the board. I think Super Poly is pretty decent into the Unchained matchup, as it's very good into the Chimera matchup. However, it's incredibly lackluster into Kashtira. And I think Kashtira, although it's an old deck, I still hold true and think that it's going to be the best deck in the room. I think it's going to be the most played deck in the room for that same reason. And Super Poly is kind of just bad against it, right? So is Super Poly worth a main deck slot to just for that reason alone? That being said, Super Poly, is essentially our win condition against Branded. It's our win condition against Labyrinth in a sense, because although it's the best way to remove the monsters that Labyrinth essentially sets up, right? And Labyrinth is an incredibly difficult matchup for Dark Magician in this case. Going back to essentially what I said into the reason we're cutting Droll and we're thinking about swapping the 9 cards that specified above, the Village, the Super Poly, and then the Birus. The reason for this is to opt to play cards that hit every deck, right? For example, the reason why our deck did so incredibly well in the case tournament is because I played cards that strictly beat what we were going to see in the case tournament. In that Dune case tournament a few months ago or a month ago, I knew we were going to every player was going to be on Pearly. I thought every player was going to be on heavy combo stuff like the Synchro Piles, and I also thought there was going to be a lot of Branded, right? And because I knew what was coming into that tournament, it was so Droll was obviously a no-brainer, as was Nibiru, Village, and Super Poly. Whereas for a YCS, you really don't know. You need to prepare for everything, right? And for that reason, although I said this before, and I hate these 1-for-1 interactions. However, I think the 3 Ash Blossoms are going to be played, as are the 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. Obviously, I would like to play the board breakers like Dark Ruler No More and Evenly Matched. However, I do think that the room is going to be pretty prepared for those cards, and specifically Dark Ruler No More. Specifically Evenly Matched. Not so much Dark Ruler No More, but Evenly Matched. I think the room is going to be incredibly prepared for it. And for that reason alone, I'm kind of thinking about opting not to play them and just opting to play as many generic cards as possible. In addition to the Ash Blossoms and the Infinite Impermanences, I am thinking about playing Book of Eclipse as an alternative option to Super Poly. Obviously, Books of Moon and Book of Eclipse don't hit the board as crazy as Super Poly does. However, what Book of Moon and Book of Eclipse do is that no matter what the board is, they are effective. They will force a negate out of your opponent. They will force an interaction out of your opponent. And if they don't, you just win, right? And that's why I think Book of Eclipse is so unbelievably strong. In addition to Book of Eclipse, I think just having the option, obviously good players won't do this. Keep in mind, good players won't do this, but this could win us a game in round, 2 or 3, right? Where our opponent's thinking big brain plays and they decide to Ash one of our Book of Eclipses. That's obviously an Ash bait, immediately making our plays live and essentially free in that sense, right? So that's something to keep in mind. But I'm actually quite not sure. With decks like Unchained, and I think another interesting deck that's not going to, I don't think a lot of people are going to be on it. However, you might be seeing some people on it, are those cyber strategies. Salamangreat I think is an excellent example of this, and Mathmech especially. I think those kind of decks are going to catch a lot of players off guard. Even like Marincess saw there's a player that did very well with Marincess at the recent remote regional, right? So I think like Marincess and those cyber strategies, they're going to be very tricky. And along with Unchained, I think this card could see spotlight in the future. It has insane synergy with our list, and that is Phantasme. Phantasme was a card that saw an insane amount of play when it was first released because of how every deck was just a link-based strategy, right? And I think with the game going into that kind of direction, Phantasme could be very, very spicy at this YCS. This might be a little premature because I do think, like, obviously the decks I specified outside of Unchained, none of them do play links. However, you have a lot of rogue strategies that play a lot of links. Like Sprite, for example, plays Sprint, right? And those other Live Twins and things like that. Dragon Link also has a lot of link monsters that they go into. And like I said, I keep going back to Unchained. I think Unchained is going to be the sleeper pick of this YCS. No longer a sleeper pick because of how much success it did have in the 3v3 Brazil YCS. That being said, I think Phantasme could be an incredibly spicy card going into this YCS. Like I said, it's going to be premature. I'm not sure if I'm going to play this. However, I always liked Phantasme. It did have amazing synergy with Dark Magician early on, being a dragon and a level 7, right? So essentially, Phantasme is also like a pseudo illusion of chaos in a sense, how it does allow you to fix your hand, which is really awesome. And like I said, just being a dragon on its own has a lot of synergy with Dark Magician and the lines of play we want to do, right? So this could be an interesting card going into this particular YCS. This is going to be a heavy question mark. As of right now, I think it's strictly Copium. I'll be honest. I think it's Copium, and it won't see too much play. At most, maybe it's going to be a side deck option. Right now, we're just talking about main deck options, right? We'll go into the side deck and what I want to play in the side deck in a few seconds. I just want to go over what our main deck's going to look like into a variety of different matches. Because of the lack of the light and dark decks, I'm not even going to be considering Beast Steals for this YCS. I don't think Beast Steals will be nearly as effective as they normally should be. I think the only matchups it really does well against is against Branded and against Dragon Link. Even Labyrinth, I think to an extent they could be okay, but even then I think they're relatively lackluster. I'm not going to be considering them at all. I'll be taking them with me to Vancouver. Maybe there's going to be a last minute change. I'm going to be taking them in a binder, obviously, if there's going to be a last minute mind change in terms of playing them or not. However, I don't think that we're going to be using them. So essentially what we are essentially thinking about now is, do we play the Super Polys? I think Nibirus are going to be in the main deck 100%. I think also we need to figure out optimal line. Well, we obviously know already the optimal lines of play to play around Nibiru. I think our deck does play around Nibiru fairly well. The only times it really does play into Nibiru is if we don't open optimally. So I don't think Nibiru is like a threat against us, and I do think a lot of people are going to be on Nibiru. So I think that worst comes to worst, I think if our opponent, if the early on, if it's determined that Nibiru is going to be a crazy card, this card might be dead in our deck because of just the way that players are going to be able to play around it. However, like I said, right, I do think Kashtira is going to be very important, very heavy represented deck. Branded Chimera is going to be very heavy represented. Unchained is going to be represented heavily. And I think Nibiru, if they want to play as optimally as possible, I think they have to play into Nibiru. Obviously, if they open the nuts, they could play around it, which is, the case with most of these top tier decks, right? But I do think Nibiru is going to be mainstay. The big question, I think, is Secret Village in the main deck. Is Secret Village going to be high enough impact going first, right? I think there's a lot of decks that don't really care about Village. Kashtira, obviously, like they do care about it in a sense. However, if we don't open Dragoon, essentially, they're going to be able to wipe our spellcasters fairly easy and break our boards. Assuming that, if we just end on Winda and Village, Kashtira, that's not an issue for Kashtira to break that board, right? So Secret Village is one card that I'm kind of heavily considering moving into the side deck for strictly going first options into those decks like Runic, like Pearly, Branded Chimera, those kind of matchups. So maybe Village sees play there, but I'm not sure yet. Moving on into the side deck, the only cards I'm going to be 100% keeping in the side deck are the 3 copies of Kurikara and the 3 copies of Solemn Judgment. Cosmic Cyclone is very, very strong. I don't know if it's going to be as crazy. I am scared of Anti-Spell. I think Anti-Spell is going to be pretty prevalent, especially in the side. Cosmic Cyclone is very interesting. I think it's definitely better than Feather Duster. I just don't know how much I need to respect back row decks. This goes back to, Guardian Chimera. I think if they set one of their Chimera fusions, Cyclone is very strong against that because it forces them to use it if they do want to use it. Against Labyrinth, obviously going first, you set a Cyclone and it could potentially end their turn, right? Which is very, very strong. I think Cosmic is good, and I think we keep the 3 just for the sole reason of respecting back row. I'm just not sure how much we need to currently respect back row with the way the format is kind of shaping out. Judgment, I think with the way our board is very floodgate heavy, I think Judgment is a must, right? If we don't open Village, there's so many cards that just kill our board, right? Dark Ruler No More being one of them. Super Poly, Judgment can't out Super Poly, but cards like Dark Ruler No More, Triple Tactics Talents, Dragoon is only 1 negate, right? So Dragoon and a Judgment is immediately 2 negates, and Judgment stops the cards that really kill Dragoon, right? Kurikara is a kaiju. I think it's needed. I think it's going to be the best card in the side deck for us. And that leaves us with 6 slots in the side deck. And previously we did run the Thrust package. We run the 3 copies of Thrust, the 1 Talents, 1 Feather Duster, and 1 Herald. I don't think Herald is going to make an appearance in this YCS. I think it's a very cool tech in a very Pearly heavy format and a very Towers heavy format, right? I think Herald is actually really, really cool in that regard. I just don't see it being as useful going into the YCS. Duster and Talents will be played for sure if we play Thrust. I think Thrust could potentially even be a main deck option if it comes down to it. I think Thrust is just a very crazy card. It's a custom card. Allowing you to search any spell and trap card from your deck is very, very strong. The only issue with Thrust in our regard is that going first, Thrust is really, really dead because unless we play Imperm, there's nothing we can search off Thrust that can be useful, right? But if that's the case, we have cards like Magician's Souls, which can pitch it for draws and things like that. So Thrust is kind of whatever going first. However, going second, I think Thrust is crazy. And that's maybe Thrust is the card that we swap out Secret Village for, right? So I'm not exactly sure on the Thrust package just yet. There are a few cards that I want to go into with the side deck, and a lot of them we did discuss already. When talking about the main deck, right? I think Book of Eclipse is a card that can see potential play in the side deck. I think if Super Poly doesn't warrant a main deck slot or Secret Village doesn't warrant a main deck slot, I think those are 2 cards that are definitely going to be in the side deck. I do think we are going to be playing Village, and I do think we're going to play Super Poly. It's just a matter of where in the deck we're going to be playing them, right? So a lot of these questions have yet to be unanswered. I just wanted to quickly take the time in this video to go over my final thoughts in preparing for YCS Vancouver, right? And pretty much asking you guys for help in providing any suggestions that you may have. So that's it for the video. This will be the last video I upload until the big finale next week, going over my time in Vancouver. One thing I do want to ask is what you guys want to see when I'm there. Do I play out all 9 to 11 rounds or however many rounds it is of YCS Swiss and find out where my final ranking is after the end of the event? Or say after round 6 or 7 or 8, whatever it is, I fail to make top cut, because obviously top cut is incredibly difficult in a tournament like this. With the best of the best playing, we are immediately at an uphill battle the second we walk through that door with Dark Magician. Say I don't make top cut, and I will be as devastated as I'm sure most of you will be. If we don't make top cut, would you guys be interested in me playing in side events, potentially doing in that video, we go over our matchups and our time in YCS. However, we also go over the various side events that we play in. I won't be able to record any matches, I don't think, while I'm there. However, I think a cool discussion and a showcase video of if we're able to win things in different side events, I think that would be an awesome experience. At the end of the day, YCS is far more than just a tournament. It's an entire experience, right? So I think that whatever the case is, I'm just looking to have a great time. Let me know what you guys would like to see. Would you like to see where I finish as a final ranking after 11 rounds of Swiss? Because I will play 11 rounds of Swiss if that's what you guys want to see, regardless if I make top cut or not. Or if, top cut is officially out of the question, we don't achieve our goal, would playing in various side events be something that you guys are interested in? Say, I win a mat or a giant card, things like that. Would you guys be thrilled if I was able to enter one of those with this same deck, right? This is the deck I'm taking throughout the entire weekend. Would you guys be excited if I entered those kind of competitions? Let me know. And before saying goodbye, I just want to clarify that this isn't the end of our journey. Dark Magician is and always will be my favorite deck, and what makes Yu-Gi-Oh! Fun for me is taking this archetype to its absolute peaks. Regardless of what happens this weekend, more Dark Magician content will follow, and I can promise you that. Thank you to everyone for watching this video. The support once again is out of this world for me. This was more of a podcast-like episode and a discussion video. If that's something you like and are interested in, please let me know, and I'll obviously make more videos for that in the content in the future. Sorry. So without further ado, the next time you'll see me will be later on next week, where I'll go over what happened in Vancouver, and I'm so excited. My flight leaves in about 48 hours or 60-ish hours from now, and I can't be more excited. Thank you for watching, and have an amazing day.